All right, everybody. So welcome back to the Science and Game. Never mind. Live Science and Game. How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow? This is episode 6 with live with Science and Games, and we're here with fellow coach Elena, who is a book of knowledge. We've actually been social media friends for like a year and a half now, maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
And we kind of just been in contact back and forth, and kind of learning a little bit off of each other and having different recommendations for books. And then here we are on each other's podcast. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Elena?
Oh, right. Thank you so much for, first of all, having me on this morning. I'm definitely excited. We had a blast. I had Chris on my podcast, What the Funk, a couple weeks ago, and that episode has since gone live. We talked about birth control, which was a great conversation. I loved it. It was such a blast. But I've been a fitness coach here online specifically since about 2020, when getting through the panini and everything like that. But I've worked in the fitness industry for about 10 years and sort of followed my own journey with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is autoimmune thyroid disease, which basically means that my body attacks my thyroid. So my thyroid doesn't produce hormones when it's being attacked. And my additional journey with endometriosis, which is a chronic reproductive illness where endometrial tissue implants itself places outside the uterus where it's not supposed to be. It's a grand time. And have kind of gone through my own journey with that, subsequent gut health issues, dabbled in bodybuilding, struggled with eating disorder, and just have had sort of this wild journey to kind of get me to this point where I'm sort of on a mission to be who I needed about 10 years ago. Because 10 years ago, these were not conversations that were happening within the fitness industry. And it's a good thing that they are now. Like there's definitely been, I think, a positive shift overall, but there's still so much more work to be done. I still see some crazy shit.
Yeah. I still see lots of crazy stuff too. And it kind of, I'm kind of baffled at how we still see a lot of the things that I was seeing when I first started in the industry about 8 years ago. As I started, I wasn't a coach then, but I was getting into the workout world and PT world. And there's still some of the exact same things that I see. But one thing I think that makes us great coaches, and I'm going to say that we're great coaches. Like, I would recommend anybody to Elena, is our experience and what made us come here, and the experience we have that made us want to learn more and kind of get where we are today. It's rare that we find someone who comes from a spoon-fed background, nothing wrong with them, and next thing you know, they're great coaches, right? We all had our aha moment. And what would you say your aha moment is that got you into the coaching industry first before we start into gut health?
Oh man. I think that my aha moment was, and this was like well before I got into coaching, but it's when I finally started to pursue my own education, I think a little bit more. And I think that's really that was sort of the seed that started it all. I was 23 years old and I was otherwise should have been living in a, very healthy body. And I was commuting to work and I was struggling with extreme fatigue, extreme gut pain. I was in and out of the hospital and I would, get 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep a night and I would still be exhausted. And one day I fell asleep driving on the freeway and rear-ended somebody, and that was
very dangerous.
It was very dangerous. Luckily it wasn't a serious accident and I was driving like a 2002 4Runner, so that thing is a tank, so yeah. I was able to drive after that. I didn't injure myself, but it didn't make the experience any less scary. And that was sort of this cannot happen. Like, this cannot happen. This could have been so much worse. What if there hadn't been traffic? What if things hadn't been slow that day? What if I had been driving 70 miles an hour?
Many what ifs.
And I was just like, oh God, I was like, something has to change. I don't know what it is, but something has to change. And then therein kind of having had gotten sort of like a basic sort of subclinical hypothyroidism diagnosis from my doctor. From there, started digging in a little bit more. and actually came to discover that it wasn't just a low thyroid due to lifestyle choices. It was actually an autoimmune disease that had developed, likely because I had endometriosis from a very young age, and that went undiagnosed and untreated for about a decade. And I mean, the statistic is if you have one autoimmune or chronic illness and you don't do anything about it, and it's not that I didn't try to do anything about my endometriosis. So the solution was birth control and painkillers, which
Yeah.
again, go listen to, well, maybe like the podcast we talked about birth control.
Listen to that.
It's not a
part,
band-aid.
go to her podcast from last week.
Yeah, it doesn't fix anything, guys. That's the bottom line. But then sort of, I think, developed due to this other underlying chronic illness plus genetic factors plus lifestyle and environmental factors, then led to an autoimmune disease. And I'm very proud to say that, less than a decade after my initial diagnosis with Hashimoto's specifically, as I'm completely off medication, which is amazing. Like, you think it's going to be a sentence of, oh, you're going to be on medication for the rest of your life. And it doesn't have to be. And so that was sort of my aha moment of like, wow, I really could have fucked up somebody's life. Am I allowed to say that? You can bleep me out.
Yeah, of course. This is my podcast. It's kind of like, what is that movie called? It's got like Vince Vaughn and then they start a frat.
I also can't think of the name.
Yeah, anything you want. As long as you have earmuffs, you say shit, balls, cock, fuck. Like anything on my podcast goes.
Yes.
Like
yes.
The reason why it says explicit in my deal.
Yes.
But yeah,
mine too.
And that's crazy. I never knew that about you because I worked for the state for 8 years and we have tons of statistics about highway deaths and all that. So that's crazy that you came out alive. And Amber and I had a similar experience. It's not my aha moment, but this is kind of way off topic. But my first day of undergraduate or going to school, Amber and I actually got in a wreck on the highway and my tire had blown on the highway and we did 3 swerves, cross traffic, missed an 18-wheeler, then flipped 4 or 5 times down the hill. And we walked out with a couple scratches. Oh. And it's always funny because she has a scar on her leg in the shape of a C. So she says I branded her that day. But yeah, it was something we'll never forget. But
those moments are wake-up calls.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. To be completely honest, for anyone listening, I did not finish college. I'm a college dropout, but I do coach MDs and RDs. So, there's that. But to get back on topic, gut health, it's something that I would say is a little more popular now, but it's still widely misunderstood.
Yes.
And I remember having a friend, I haven't talked to him in many years, but about 8 years ago when he started his graduate program, he wanted to do gut health because he said there was almost nothing in the field. And I remember him talking about digestion and how to optimize it. And I had this crazy idea. I'm like, okay, if we can optimize digestion, should we eat more or should we eat less if we're digesting more, right? Because you get more, you're absorbing more nutrients, but does that put us in a calorie surplus if we're digesting more or deficit? Is like, how's it work? So that kind of got my wheels spinning up there when I first got in the coaching industry. And yeah, so again, it's something that's still unknown, but we have a good idea going forward where we came from, where we are. But it's something that a lot of coaches try to get into now that they still don't understand. They may have taken one of Sue's class and think I'm ready to go, right? But there's so much more than just Sue or Dash's class. Like they're really good classes to start into, but man, there's so much more to go into. So what would you say is the number one issue you see with someone's gut health? They come to you and they're like, you know what, I'm constipated. I only have bowel movements every 2 or 3 days. Where do you start to break things down?
Whew. Okay. So that's a great question. And I think that you're right. Gut health in general is something that has become more popular, which is really great, but there are so many nuances to it. Mm-hmm. I ask sort of a slew of questions when somebody comes to me and they're like, I'm constipated. I'm not going to the bathroom regularly. I'm really bloated. There's a few things that sort of pop into my brain of, okay, are we struggling with, is it a nutrient deficiency? Is this a stress response? What is their diet history like? What is their exercise history like? Right? Because these are all things that will impact our digestion, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
What are they taking as far as supplements? Are they on antacids or PPIs? Like what is going on that is sort of an underlying issue? And then you get, people that say, well, I have IBS or I have GERD. So they
Mhm.
either have and IBS is not really so much a disease as it is a label for a series of symptoms.
Yeah, it's like it's one of many things.
It's exactly. It could be and it presents multiple ways. And then GERD is obviously like chronic high acid, like levels of acid reflux or acid reflux symptoms.
Right.
Pardon me. And so you get sort of a combination of these things. And I think that my first lifestyle go to when it comes to somebody who is struggling with gut health is I'm going to look at their food choice, which is everybody's favorite thing because it does matter. It does matter. It's not you are what you eat. It's you are what you digest or don't digest, is almost a bigger issue than what you're actually digesting, to be completely honest. Everybody's so afraid of, oh, you're not supposed to eat so-and-so food because it's got something in it that your body can't digest. Well, I really don't care because I know for a fact that you're not getting enough micronutrients in your diet to begin with. Like, I'm not worried about telling you not to eat this, that, or the other thing. I'm worried about getting more stuff into your diet. That's gonna matter. And then you talk about not just food choice and food quality, because food quality makes a difference, guys. Get the good vegetables, wash them, make sure that you're paying attention to where your proteins and stuff are sourced as much as you can, because that can be, again, kind of another sort of in the weeds topic. But just maybe start by getting wild caught fish instead of farm raised. You know what I mean? Something like that, because that's going to impact the quality of the nutrients that you're getting from something. And then looking also at their food habits. So it's like food choice and food habits. How often are you eating? Are you constantly snacking all day long every day? I think there's this big misconception with, there's the whole you can boost your metabolism by eating 6 small meals a day, like every 2 hours.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm going, and you're going to stress the shit out of your digestive system if you do that, because your digestive system is actually something that is quite miraculous. Digestion actually starts once you smell food. And that's a fun fact that I tell people. You start to produce digestive enzymes the second that you smell something that's sad, that like tastes good. When you're really hungry and you like walk into a restaurant and all of a sudden you're not just hungry or like ravenous.
Yep.
It's
As soon as
because
you
of the
smell
smells.
sweet, you're just walking out to somebody's table.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, that smells so good. Oh, I'm so hungry. Where's our food? That's a physiological response. And I think that people don't realize that, which I think is really funny. And so if that's ever happened to you and you wonder why that is, it's not just all in your head. It's literally your body going, feed me. But if you don't give your digestive system time to like calm down in between meals for, 3-4 hours at least, or ideally, because, most people will get hungry at that point and you should eat if you're hungry, I think. So, but you're going to trigger that parasympathetic nervous system to not be as active, which is that rest and digest, which is going to impact chronic stress levels, which will in turn impact your ability to digest and absorb nutrients. So it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? So there's so food choice, food habits, food quality, are you even, chewing your food? Or are you that person that
Big thing.
sits there and just scarfs down your meal and then it's just sitting like a lump in your stomach? And it's something as simple as, did you chew your meal or did you inhale it?
Yeah.
Is going to make a difference. So like you think about a smoothie, right? I love having my clients incorporate smoothies of various kinds within their daily intake. And a lot of them really enjoy it, especially if they're busy on the go in the morning. It's a great thing to take with them in the morning because the blender is basically doing a lot of the work for you. It's chewing the food for you. And you have to actually chew your food because your saliva has digestive enzymes that will help break down the food, which will make it easier to digest in your system. And so those are sort of the first things. That's like the first line of defense, I think. And I know it seems people are probably going, well, those are really simple. They're simple, but they're not necessarily easy to shift because you're not just talking about digestive health. You're talking about behaviors and comfort that people have clung to for years and years and years that now have to be challenged in order to shift behaviors around food choice, food habits, and eating habits that really challenge people on an emotional level. And that's where the biggest struggle is.
Yeah, and for me, it's something that I realized about a year and a half ago is growing up with two other brothers and a sister who's taller than I am. Uh, with food, we scarfed it down. We did, and I always thought that was something to brag about. Like, oh, I can eat my food, my whole plate in like 2 minutes. And
Yeah.
when you start chewing your food, you realize you get a lot fuller so much faster. And if you look at the other countries that serve food at a restaurant where it's like this much food, you're like, what the hell is that? Like in America, you get this big ass plate, right? But everywhere else, they're taught to chew their food slowly, enjoy the food, savor the foods, and they get fuller so much faster. And there's no wonder why they're so much leaner than we are. Now, I'm not going to say leaner in a way of just, well, I'm going to say leaner just the way I like body mass index, but
right.
They're eating so much less. But is that a good thing or bad thing? I guess it could be.
And we know that like obesity in general is an issue in the United States more so than it is in other countries. And I think it has to do with how we are taught to view food from a very young age. But you're absolutely right. It's you. I was just in Ireland, and it is different. I was in Ireland this summer, and how they serve food, how they treat meals, is so much different than it is here.
Yeah, and
it's wild.
One thing that it's kind of weird. So I had kind of thought about it before I read it in a book a year later. But in Hispanic households, most of us aren't allowed to leave the table until our food is done. And our parents unknowingly put a lot of food on there, and they force their kids to eat it and get done and stuff themselves and just create this psychological habit that, okay, I have to finish my food. And that's something I still struggle with today. Like I'll be like, I'm still learning how to be satisfied and not full. And I'm like, am I really going to throw this food? Because in my household, we have nothing but like grass-fed, pasture-raised, organic, all that good stuff. I'm like, man, this is expensive food. Like I have to finish my plate. But when it's dieting time, okay, I'm satisfied. I need to realize that I may still feel a little hungry, but it's okay, and it's something that I'm teaching my kids as well. But they're not allowed to get snacks if they don't finish their food because they said they're not hungry anymore, right? Yeah. So it's
there's a difference,
right? And we portion it out pretty well to where they may have like maybe a handful for the girls who are 5, right? But they're like, oh, I'm not hungry no more, but I want ice cream. Like, no.
No, you don't want ice.
There's a fine line between me stuffing their plate and forcing them to eat it or them just being lazy. So it's something that we're playing with as they grow too.
That's funny.
But yeah, it's something that I noticed with, my culture is, man, like we're not allowed to leave or we're in trouble. So it's creating, and to be honest, I can say I'm Hispanic. We're fat. Like we are, we're fat, we're diabetic, we're obese. And it's something that I want to help change as well. And Amber and I have been talking about doing some things in the community once we get our studio going next year about having, some free lessons and things like that on how we can change our community slowly but surely. Yeah. And I like how you always say that, smell starts the digestion process there first. It's something that if I have an athlete come on who's a type A, give me a meal plan, I'll eat it. My first question is, okay, what foods do you not like? Because we've all been there, and you and I both have experience. It's been a long time since we've done it, but we've had experience where we're eating the same thing and we're gagging just to get that chicken or tilapia and sweet potato down.
I've definitely done the cold salmon in the locker room.
And we feel full before we even go. It's that weird, I feel full, don't want to eat it, but I'm hungry at the same time. And what kind of mind fuck is that, right? Like, come on, I'm hungry, but this is all I have to eat, and you're gagging as you're eating it. And we force ourselves to eat it. And we, to anyone competing, we all kind of get there eventually, but it's not something we should do for 12 weeks, right? Maybe the last couple of weeks, if you got, God forbid, your coach gave you 20 grams of fat and all you can have is tilapia, egg whites, and that's it, then I don't know, but it's something that is accepted now, like, oh, it's just mind strength. But is it though? And I
Yeah.
love CT Fletcher, but he talks about, quit being a pussy and eat your food. But he grew up in a different age that we did, you know.
Yeah.
And but
That's
like
that's the I stole this phrase from another coach friend of mine, the suck it up buttercup school.
yeah, suck it up, buttercup. And like I said, that's one reason why I ask my athletes, okay, what foods do you want? And weekly, if they need to change their meal plan, I definitely will have no problem. There's tons
Yeah.
of food to choose from with very similar macros that'll fit.
Yeah.
Um, but
And
yeah,
food variety is important
it
too
is.
to the
It is.
microbiome.
Yep, it is. And that was gonna be the next thing I got into is how for someone with a meal plan, how can they include variety of foods? And for myself, let's say if someone has no preference, I'm definitely not giving them chicken all day or beef all day. Like it's
Mhm.
gonna be like maybe some chicken and beef every other meal, fruits and veggies. Now, myself, I've been kind of leaning more towards more fruits than veggies. Now, I still
Mhm.
have my one serving of 1 to 2 servings of veggies, which is pretty easy. I mean, anyone can get a cup of whatever in, but I've been leaning towards more fruits than veggies, maybe like a 2-to-1 ratio for myself. And I've noticed that my digestion, along with other clients' digestion, has been pretty spot on lately. I have some clients with Crohn's disease that decided to tell me that after we started working together. So I was like, oh, let me dive into some new learning, and we've gotten pretty good at having at least every other day bowel movements, with including lots of veggies, lots of fruits, minimum veggies. I have different fats in there for her, and including things like psyllium husk and things like that. And then I actually have another client who I don't think she's ever been diagnosed with anything, but she would go almost a week of no bowel movements and constipation when we first started. And now we're down to, if not every day, about every other day. So we've made some pretty good progress. But I would say it's not just the foods on my end that are helping a lot of these clients with digestion, it's the stress response. And like you talked about, like what is your stress like? So, like you said, the parasympathetic state is rest and digest. So it's something that I have clients do before they eat and before they go to bed, is just some parasympathetic breathing, maybe take a hot shower, relax, get away from the phone, put it away for a little bit, and to let their body get into that rest and digest state. Because if someone's in a constant stressed state, then their digestion is not going to be where it should be. Because if you think about it from a physiological standpoint or a primitive standpoint, if we're stressed and we're running for our lives, like our body has no need to poop or pee right now. We're digesting. We need to stay alive. And a lot of
Yeah.
people live in that same stressed state from uh, commuting to work, being caught in traffic, texting their significant other that they're pissed off, having a phone call that didn't go as well. And then next thing you know, your kids are calling you because somebody got in a fight. Like there's this constant, we're putting ourselves in these constant stressed states that no wonder our digestion is terrible,
Right.
because there's no, physiologically, our body thinks, okay, we don't need to be digesting right now, but we're still eating. So we're
Yeah.
still constantly going and going. And
It's it's basically conserving energy in all of your other processes for reproduction.
yeah,
That's what
yeah.
it's doing. It's going back
That's
to, you
basically
said
it.
exactly that primal brain of um okay, everything else needs to kind of slow down. We're going to reserve all of our energy so that way we can still produce eggs and sperm.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
it.
Exactly.
That's it. That's the body's priority. And it is, and this is the wild thing, is that you can't outsmart your body or what it needs. It's going to tell you it's missing something, whether you want it to or not.
Yeah.
And I think that it's good that, as you're, doing, meal plans and, structure for those clients that are following that type of structure, is good to include different choice, and good to include, and in a lot of cases, and this is where we again kind of tiptoe the fine line of supplements or no supplements.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of depends on the person, but I would say that the majority of individuals need to be having some kind of micronutrient supplement to some degree, especially when it comes to like certain nutrients precede other micronutrients. So like if you're out there and you've been told by your doctor or somebody you've got like a vitamin D deficiency, because almost everybody does, I feel like almost everyone I talk to has got a vitamin D deficiency, but you're not taking magnesium or zinc.
Yep.
your body's not going to absorb and utilize that vitamin D supplement.
And a lot of
That's like, right.
those
There are
micronutrients
precursors.
are depleted with stress.
Exactly. Or you're not going to be able to get enough, magnesium usually from your diet. So I have a lot of individuals that I recommend we need to be taking a magnesium supplement, right? Because you're not going to be eating likely enough green things throughout the day to get a proper amount of magnesium. And for women especially, magnesium is a precursor to supporting sex hormones is massive. And so you're likely not going to be getting enough variety from your diet on its own. So bringing in a supplement, and I'm not talking like go take a greens powder. I have mixed feelings about greens powder.
You and I both. Yeah,
It's one of those things where it's like you're better off just eating the real thing, because your body is not going to be able to absorb a powdered version of something compared to what it's going to be able to absorb to the real thing. So you need to do the real thing first. And then if you want to like add in a greens powder, I mean, it's not going to hurt anything necessarily unless it's got like a weird array of probiotics, and that's going to further disrupt your gut microbiome.
Yeah.
And probiotics in and of itself is another thing that I think a lot of people take and, oh, this probiotic is going to fix all my problems. And
especially if they have like terrible gut bacteria, H. pylori, all you're doing is feeding that bad gut.
You're adding fuel to the fire in that situation. But you do have to, and then here's the other ticket too, is people don't realize that you have to eat enough food for certain digestive processes to occur.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is what we run into, and I'm sure you see this too, where you do have to monitor digestion closely with your, clients that are in a calorie deficit phase for how long they're in it. You have to really watch it. And anybody out there who you're going to start nodding your head with me as you start listening is that, as you start eating in a deficit, well, what does our metabolism do? Our metabolism starts to slow down, which includes your digestion, which Chris already mentioned. Your digestion starts to slow down. Okay. But if you don't have enough food within your stomach to produce enough stomach acid, first of all, there's two things that are going to maybe happen. Okay. This always blows people's mind. And this maybe even kind of branches onto the topic of acid reflux. Sorry, I had a brain fart for a second. Acid reflux, or GERD, is the majority of individuals that are struggling with that are actually suffering from low stomach acid, unless there's some other physiological reason. So you have your esophagus. Okay, we're getting sciencey, people.
Oh, I like this. With science.
You have your esophagus, which is where you eat your food and it goes from your esophagus into your stomach. Well, at the bottom of your esophagus is a sphincter. Kind of
talking about your ass. We're talking about
exactly. It's your lower esophageal sphincter. Now, once you eat food, you produce stomach acid. You have to produce enough stomach acid for that sphincter to close. And if you're eating these tiny meals every 2 hours, what's not going to maybe happen? That sphincter is not going to close. You're not producing enough stomach acid. Or two, you're constantly taking antacids or you're on PPIs for longer than a couple months. Yeah. Okay, PPIs are not meant to be taken like, Prilosec and stuff like that is not meant to be taken as a long-term fix for anything. And we can get into that, why that's an issue later, but actually in just a minute, probably. That sphincter is not going to shut if you're on constantly taking antacids. And then with that low stomach acid, you're not going to fully digest your food, which means you're going to have a malabsorption of nutrients from whatever food you're eating. And then you're probably going to have some leftover bacteria and waste that's going to fester in your gut and cause all sorts of problems, which is why taking antacids and PPIs for a long-term situation can cause more problems in the long term, because you're essentially creating an environment where your body can't fully break down the things that you're feeding it. And then it just sits there and it festers.
And it ferments.
And then you got bloating, you got gas, you got heartburn. You get heartburn not because of an overproduction of stomach acid, but you get heartburn because that damn sphincter won't shut fully on a consistent basis. So it's like, back up to the esophagus. And there we go. And there's obviously other factors that can contribute to heartburn, like laying down right after a meal. Let's
not do that, guys. As much as we all get that itis, let's at least sit up for about 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, just let things get down where they need to get to before you take that post-lunch nap.
Let gravity do its thing.
Yeah. So, but so those are like this. And this is, there's so many factors that will impact your ability to digest food and your ability to absorb nutrients, right? So we talk about basic nutrients that people are likely not getting from their everyday meals. Okay. Zinc, copper, magnesium, B vitamins are really important. So like a B complex is also another really important one. And then also, vitamin D if you're not like getting enough sun and stuff like that. So kind of that I think is like the big five that if you're going to like focus on taking a supplement, finding like a multivitamin or some kind of other like combo supplements going to have something that has kind of all those things in it is really, really important. And that's just like a basic for most people walking down the street. There's going to be some shifts. So obviously always, consult your, whoever it is that you're working with on that front, but those are kind of going to be some of the big hitters there. And those things will precede like your sex hormone production, any deficiencies from any medication that you might be taking, food deficiencies of the fact that you're not eating enough vegetables or fruits too. And I love that you incorporate fruits because fruits have such a great array of micronutrients. And frankly, you can only eat so many green things in a day before you want to put your head through a wall.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real. And so, yeah, I have no idea where we got to different here from there, but yeah. If you diet, your digestion slows, you stop pooping enough, it causes a bunch of problems, causes bloating, and then there's a few reasons why that happens. And I think that was the point I was trying to make, is that there's
multiple. And it happens a lot with competitors, especially peak week, when there's a phase where you're just kind of depleting, and really all you get is minimal carbohydrates, moderate protein, moderate fat, and there's not enough food to stimulate digestion. So you may experience a day or two without having bowel movements, and that's where your coach should come in and determine if there's anything that needs to be done there or not. And that's a whole other array of conversation we could have. But you talked about antacids and PPI, or if someone doesn't know, it's a proton pump inhibitor, and these are like prescribed like candy sometimes by our physicians.
Oh God.
And like you said, it has its use, right? As much as I am a like anti-Western medicine for the most part, it has its use.
It does.
And it can have its benefits. But the problem is our doctors have a quota to make. They have to meet so many patients and cut those patients in by time. You get 10, 15 minutes. They don't have time to keep up with 400 patients and say, okay, when's the last time you took your antacids or a PPI? You know what? Let's just give you some more, right? Let's just, if you're still experiencing those symptoms, because that's what they do. They're taught to treat symptoms, not to treat root causes. And that's where your hybrid coach like Elena or I will come in and try to dissect that. But what are your problems with PPIs? And then kind of give us your spiel.
Okay. So again, like I said earlier, it's not so much about the fact that you have an overproduction of stomach acid for most individuals. And like I said, this is for most people. It's that there are other lifestyle factors that are inhibiting the proper production of digestive enzymes and stomach acid. And enzymes and stomach acid do go hand in hand, in this situation that will inhibit your ability to digest food, as well as cause symptoms that induce acid reflux or heartburn on a semi-regular basis. And so typically what I'll do with somebody, like I always like to do like a stomach acid test. Like if you're wondering if you have low stomach acid, you can do like a stomach acid test, and it's where you put like baking soda and like a teaspoon of baking soda and a little bit of water before you eat or drink anything.
Burp test. Yep.
And then see how long it takes you to burp. And if you burp right away, you probably have enough stomach acid, or maybe sometimes even too much. And in that case, I honestly, I haven't run into anybody who burps right away. Frankly, I always end up people who either don't burp at all, or it takes 20 minutes. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, so we got some low stomach acid going on. And this is usually due to, and I say usually due to, I get people that come to me and unbeknownst to them, they've been under eating for a long time, which has sort of caused their slower metabolism and struggles to manage their body weight in a way that they've desired, or that they're, that they've been trying to, and all the fad diets and everything like that can cause a lot of issues with that, because you get low stomach acid for an extended period of time. When we digest food, it sits in our stomach, and it's almost like, if you've ever seen like a science experiment or something where it's like you put something in a bowl and you dump acid on it and it sort of like eats something up.
Yeah.
That's kind of what's happening in your digestive system. It goes into your stomach, and it has to be broken down via digestive enzymes and stomach acid for it to pass through the intestines and absorb the parts that can be absorbed and excrete the parts that can't be excreted. Well, if something's not getting digested, it's not going anywhere.
Yep.
Like, it's literally going to sit there, and not sit there like as like a lump, although sometimes that happen, and this can lead to, in severe cases, issues with bowel obstructions, if stuff is not digesting well. I've seen it happen. It's not super common, but it can happen, where you just have food mass sitting because it can't go anywhere, and it gets stuck, and then you have pain in your stomach, and you're like, oh, what's happening? Well, you've got, a bowel obstruction of some kind. And there's multiple things that can lead to that. But
Yeah.
the bottom line is, PPIs and constantly suppressing stomach acid will leave you in a state where you're having a continuous buildup of food waste, the fermented food, and bacteria, because your gut is that first line of defense for any bacteria or viruses that you're intaking, sitting in your digestive system, and it can't be excreted. It's just hanging out there because it's not getting what it needs to get broken down.
Yep.
And then it just sits there. And then you start having issues with bloating, constipation, fatigue, brain fog. This causes issues with nutrient deficiencies, which can in turn cause hormonal disruptions with your thyroid, sex hormones.
Gut, getting things in the bloodstream that don't need to be there, all that good stuff.
It's a domino effect. And nobody tells you this when they hand you something that's like, here, take this for your heartburn.
Here's your prescription, and 1 year you're gonna feel like complete shit and look like shit.
Yeah. And then you go back to the doctor. Okay, this didn't work. So what do? They give you another one or a stronger dose, and you're just perpetuating this cycle. And then all of a sudden, this is where I get people that are like, I've been on this. My doctor's given me this. The only thing they're doing for my bloating is giving me Miralax. Like, honey, I'm sorry. I am sorry. Like, I want to go to these people and give them a hug, because they're so frustrated, because all they've been wanting is just to get relief from something that's going on, and they're not getting the full picture, because it's treat the symptom, not the root cause.
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts. So that's my issue with PPIs. Now, I will make kind of a basic recommendation, is that people that are struggling with low stomach acid can really benefit from a supplement combination of digestive enzymes and beta-ene hydrochloric acid, which is, I call them, they're functional supplements, because they're things that our body already makes. They're just not making enough of them. Yeah. So sometimes we have to give it a little bit of a boost, and taking those once or twice a day with some bigger meals, especially athletes that are either dieting or in a calorie surplus.
Yeah.
My niece came to me, and she was like, desperately trying to add muscle size on. And she's a pretty petite woman, but she was a swimmer for a long time. But she's like, I want to get in the gym and I want to get strong. And she's a nurse. And she's like, I'm eating so much food, and I just feel like I'm not, she goes, it's hard. Like, she has to eat a lot of food. She's got that swimmer's metabolism from swimming for a decade plus when she was younger. And I was like, cool, you're eating a lot of food. Let's incorporate and enzymes and beta and HCl are not going to like hurt anybody. They really aren't. I mean, don't take like 6 of them a day, but like once or twice a day is going to benefit the majority of the general population. I even have clients that are on it in addition to PPIs, because maybe they're on PPIs because they're having issues with their sphincter function for whatever reason, due to like some kind of, whatever other thing that's going on physically that's causing a malfunction. So they do have issues with stomach acid, but we take the betaine still to improve digestion, and that can help a lot too. And so that's sort of what I call like the little gut health cocktail. Is not necessarily a probiotic, because you probably have too much bacteria or an imbalance of bacteria. You need your body to be able to break down what's already there. And that's a good. And I can send Chris a link for my two favorite ones. They're on Amazon. They're good brands. They don't cost $50. And it's a super cheap, easy, effective way. So if you do a little stomach acid test, you can just kind of Google the instructions, do a little stomach acid test, see how long it takes you to burp. If it's sort of self-determined that you've got that low stomach acid issue, try adding in some enzymes and beating. It'll work for the majority of people.
For sure. You can send me the link, and if anybody wants to reach out to
Yeah.
me for that, then I'll be happy to send that to
Yep.
them. So one thing that I started incorporating, and honestly, I've never really seen much on it, it's kind of more anecdotal evidence, is fluids with eating your meals. What are your thoughts on that? One thing that I've been doing, because if you think about it, okay, if I drink a ton of water before I eat, I'm lowering stomach acid levels possibly with water. So you may get some kind of digestion imbalance there. Now, one thing I started doing is only sips about 10 minutes before, during, and 10 minutes after my meals. And then I go back to regular drinking. But it's not something that I see many people doing. Like, we still see going to barbecues, drinking your beer while you have your food. Going to the restaurant, you have tons of water or Coke or whatever it is. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a good strategy if somebody is still presenting with a lot of issues around meal times. It's usually not my first go-to because it's usually not liquid that's going to be causing the problem. And typically when I see this being an issue, it more so is when there is maybe like SIBO present, which is small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, where even just drinking water is going to cause somebody to bloat. And that's going to cause more stress for eating. And in that situation, I would recommend, like you said, just sips during meals instead of like drinking like a whole, can of or cup of whatever it is that you want to drink
like
with your
50%
meal.
of people listening to this are like, oh, when I drink water, I feel bloated. Maybe this is me.
It might be. I mean, the thing is, and SIBO's pretty, when it's one of those things where it's like, you can test for it. If you go to your regular GI, they're probably going to put you on an antibiotic. I prefer to go a different route when it comes to it because that antibiotic can in turn cause some other issues. It's like
it's wiping out your the good bacteria too.
Yeah, so. And you do have to kill out bacteria, but you also have to take, a resistant bacteria at the same time, and then you have to feed and it's not just, you can't just take an antibiotic and hope that's going to be fixed. You also have to look at your FODMAPs, how you're feeding that bacteria, how you're feeding it back up. And that's, again, another thing is that people that are on super restrictive diets for a long time, so like a low FODMAP diet, when I was kind of learning, okay, how do you go through these protocols with these like more advanced digestive issue situations, is that if you're on a limited diet for a long time, you're inhibiting positive bacteria from developing within your gut microbiome because there's an imbalance there. And again, that goes to where a varied diet of nutrients, fruits, proteins, vegetables, right? Not maybe eating the same exact thing every single week for 6 weeks, but mixing it up kind of as the weeks goes on, to match whatever your body's metabolic and caloric needs are, is going to be really important because you want to be able to keep a healthy array of bacteria. And that, to me, food variety is way more effective than a probiotic.
Yeah. And I like how you said, not only are you killing all bacteria, but the resistant bacteria, you got to get rid of that biofilm as well. There's these gut bacteria that have a defense mechanism where they create like a thick mucosal lining around them. And most of the time it is bad gut bacteria. So when you kill everything else, they live, and next thing you know, you have a stomach bad gut bacteria. So you got to make sure that you target those as well.
Yeah. So if you do go to the doctor and you get diagnosed with SIBO, which can be done via, breath test or like GI mapping or like, Dutch test will kind of tell you different things that are going on. Make sure that you're advocating and saying, cool, you're going to give me this medicine, but how are we going to treat this from a nutrition perspective? Because you have to do both. You do have to do both if you don't want to be in the same situation 6 months from now.
Yeah, because your old eating habits are going to create the same bad gut bacteria. Exactly. So you want to make sure that you start implementing the right foods, without saying supplements, the right foods. That way, you don't have that issue again.
Heck yeah.
But, yeah.
So there's a whole.
Yeah, and
it's also interconnected, and it's like one thing causes another thing, and then it's like, how do you know what's causing it? Well, that kind of goes back to the first question that you asked me. I'm always going to look at someone's lifestyle and basic food habits and food choices first,
Yep.
and then kind of dig in. And then from there, kind of uncover, all right, what might be the biggest contributing factors to this? Or is there something else going on, like SIBO, for example, that we need to address?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to start from step one and kind of work your way in. And a lot of symptoms and issues can just be alleviated by lifestyle and food shift
Yep.
and stress management.
And that's kind of how I wanted to end it is, what are some things to take away that someone who can't afford, high end coaching like us, or, I mean, unfortunately, the holistic supplements right now are on the rise because it is an upcoming industry for us. So, supply and demand, prices going up. But one thing people can do by themselves is, one, stress management, get your body in that rest and digest parasympathetic state. Start taking in higher quality foods. And like you said, just be very aware of the things that you're around doing, getting yourself accustomed to, and without going into the whole, xenoestrogen thing that we went into last week.
Right.
Just high quality food and stress management, I think, in my opinion, are some things that I've seen people fix a ton. And you know what? Honestly, I like that we didn't even go into the basic aloe vera with glutamine and stuff. Because I mean, anyone can get some results from that. But we went in a little bit deeper than just the basic, because most of the time
you want to fix it for good.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Exactly. And most of the time, most of my people who have anything, I may start them out on a light one like that, and that fixes most of it with stress management. And next thing you know, a couple months later, hey, we don't need this anymore. Because that inner leaf filler can get very expensive for sure.
It can, for sure. And I do have a workshop that I will send a link to that kind of has even some more resources. It's my Beat the Bloat workshop. So I'll ensure that I send that link over to Chris for your audience if anybody's interested in. And it kind of expands on a lot of the things that we talked about today. But it also has some resources specifically to those individuals who maybe coaching isn't an option for them right now, but it'll kind of walk you through how to start implementing changes on your own, if that's something you're interested in.
Yep, for sure. And her live master classes really are very informative. And I, for one, can confirm. So
yeah, you were at the last one.
Yep, I was the first one in too.
Yeah, you were.
But so for those that want to follow Elena and see everything she has to offer, maybe consider her for coaching, where can everyone find you?
I am on Instagram at elena.m.fit. You can also find me really easily at my website. It's very easy to remember. It is dumpyourdiet.com. And that's my website. So, and then the What the Funk podcast, which, Chris has also been on. So those are my three babies, I suppose.
Yep. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and end it here. So for all of you that want to follow, again, give her podcast a listen. I've listened to it. It's pretty good. She's very organized, coming from a teacher background. And yes, I appreciate you being on, Elena.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.